The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show, The Right Side with Doug Billings, coming to you from smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain, as always. Thank you very much. The showdown in the Strait of Hormuz. Let me talk about that. This is an important story, and if you've been scrolling through X or catching the headlines and just looking at the lines themselves, you know that Iran's been throwing everything they've got at that vital waterway over there. Drones, missiles. They've been able to mine it a little bit, throw a few mines in the strait. All of that in retaliation for the United States Operation Epic Fury, of course. But here's what the mainstream media is not telling you straight up. This is not the catastrophe that the fearmongers are hyping. Ships are still flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, just like clockwork. The real risk is more smoke and mirrors, really. The smoke and mirrors are more of a risk to us than the shutdown. And President Trump is handling it like the master negotiator he is. And he's calling on our so-called allies to finally pull their weight over there. And when you come out on top, and we will, it's time to make the free riders pay up and rethink that these lopsided alliances are worth their time. We've got to make it so they're not worth their time. They've got to pay up. It's the kind of unique behind-the-scenes analysis that you only get right here on The Right Side. No fluff, just the facts, no hopium, not clickbait, just the state of play right here in America and around the world for America's future. So let me break it down for you over there. First of all, let's set the stage on why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much. It's a narrow choke point between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, and it carries about a fifth of the world's oil supply. Think of millions of barrels a day fueling economies from Europe to Asia. That's what this thing does for the world. And Iran, stung by those precision strikes from us and from Israel, have decided to play dirty, launching asymmetric attacks to try to squeeze that strait shut. But folks, you know, as retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer pointed out on Newsmax just today, the danger over there has been wildly overblown, and it's done, of course, for clickbait. You see, the algorithm on social media doesn't reward conservative conversation, calm, cool, and collected. What it rewards is hype, and so that's why you see all of the hype. But Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer said it best, and I quote, he said, "Ships are still going through. Only 1 out of 1,000 are going to be hit. But that 1 in 1,000 is what freaks everybody out." Okay, end quote. Now, this is not to diminish any risk, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying that's the perceptual game that's at play and which Iran is playing. Psychological warfare mixed with market jitters. It's not a full-on blockade, not even close. Shaffer nailed it. And he then added, this isn't a supply issue. There's plenty of oil. The issue is perception. He's right. And I would just add that the issue is also clickbait. Commercial vessels that are transiting without major interruptions is the norm. It's the hype that's spiking oil prices and stirring panic. It really is. The markets react to jitters. And with every moment that we watch, every post made by some intellectually immature clickbait poster, it sends jitters, or it has the potential to do that. Then you've got Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who echoed that tensions could cool off, and he said soon. So we're looking at a situation where America's unmatched naval power keeps things stable, even as Iran buzzes around with drones and small boats, and they're being taken out one at a time. Here's where it gets interesting and where it also gets frustrating. President Trump, putting America first, as always, put out a direct call to our allies, air quotes around allies, right? Step up with naval assets to help escort tankers and secure the strait. And he wasn't mincing words, warning that a negative response would be very bad for the future of NATO. Those are his words. Now, Trump's logic on this is airtight. It's only appropriate, he said, that countries benefiting from the strait help ensure that nothing bad happens there. Those nations, Europeans, chugging oil, Japan, even China to a degree, rely on that route for their energy lifelines. But what do we get? Well, we get a chorus of excuses and outright refusals that expose the freeloading that's going on for far too long under past administrations. So let's run through the roll call of these holdouts because it's eye-opening, ladies and gentlemen. We can start with Germany. Okay, their defense minister, Boris Pistorius, love that name, Boris Pistorius. So he fired back. He's a woke problem, but he fired back with this real beauty of a comment. He said, quote, "What does Donald Trump expect from a handful or two of European frigates to do in the Strait of Hormuz? What the powerful U.S. Navy can't do." Okay, end quote. Then he doubled down and he called it, quote, "not our war. We have not started it," end quote. Okay. Germany's weak. We get it. The people are not, the government. Their government spokesperson, Stefan Cornelius, he piled on. And he said that there was no prior consultation from the United States or Israel, and Washington even admitted that European help wasn't essential. Folks, that's code speak for we're happy to let, America foot the bill. So that's Germany. Then there's Italy. The deputy prime minister over there, Matteo Salvini, he was very blunt, and he warned that sending ships would drag them into the fight. Quote, "Italy is not at war with anyone, and sending military ships in a war zone would mean entering the war," end quote. Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. Spain, well, Spain is flat out refusing anything that might escalate, not even letting us fly over their space or use the bases that we have over there. Greece is limited in their involvement to the Red Sea under the European Union's Apsides mission, so no dice on expanding to Hormuz for Greece. So this is a pattern, ladies and gentlemen. These allies, so-called, will cite, it's not our conflict. And fear of widening the war means that they just want a hands-off kind of vibe that's all too convenient for them, really. And even broader responses show the crack. Okay, now the EU, Kaja Kallas, he's over in the European Union. Kaja Kallas floated ideas like, well, let's get UN talks in for a deal similar to Ukraine's grain exports or tweaking the Aspides mandate. But Greece shot that down real quick. Not going to happen. Britain and Keir Starmer, their prime minister, they pledged some collective planning for navigation, security, and so forth, offering mine hunting technology, but they didn't jump into a wider war opportunity here. Denmark and Lars Løkke Rasmussen, they at least advocated for European contributions to de-escalate the thing. And get this, China stepping in with de-escalation chats all across all sides. But overall, folks, look, this is a tepid mess, and it strains NATO, and it highlights Trump's point. Why should America always play global cop while others reap the benefits? Part of the reason Germany, Italy, and Spain are saying no is because they have a huge radical Islam issue in their country. They let their borders become so porous that multiple dozens, and I can tell you, millions of radical Islamists are now inside of Germany, Italy, and Spain. I saw it firsthand before I left corporate America to come and be with you good people here on the right side. The government leaders over there know full well, especially in Germany, Italy, and Spain, if they engage to attack Iran, they're vulnerable inside their countries to terror attacks at home. So they're not saying that in public, but I'm telling you, that's part of the algebra over there. Beyond that, this rebuff that we're getting, it's not just disappointing, it's a betrayal of the alliances that we've propped up for decades. Now, we'll survive without them. And from a proud conservative standpoint, it's high time that we call all of this out. President Trump's been spot on since day one about fair burden sharing in all of this. You remember his early calls for NATO members to hit that 2% GDP defense spending requirement that they have? A lot of them just dragged their feet, and they're doing it again now. We have retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, who backed up Colonel Shaffer, who I quoted earlier, who ripped in to Europe. General Holt did. ditching Russian gas, but bulking its security for their oil routes. Okay. So he said, and I quote, you got Europe that wants to stand up every day and twice on Sunday to say, we'll never touch Russia gas again. And then urged he, meaning Trump, wants them to burden share. Get your butts down here and open up these channels. It's a perfectly reasonable request, end quote. So that's Brigadier General Blaine Holt. Well, I like the way he thinks, and he's right. So Holt even suggested redirecting the idle naval forces that we have. If you've got a naval force up in Europe and it's not doing anything, maybe you should come down here and grab a shovel. I love it. So that's the no-nonsense talk that we need. And Shaffer added an economic twist to all this, and he noted that Trump's push could, as he put it, change the very fabric of how commerce is done globally. That would potentially hit European insurance giants like Lloyd's of London, and I think we should think about it by stabilizing markets without their inflated risk premiums. And so these allies aren't just wary of escalation, they're addicted to the status quo where America subsidizes their security. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Post-World War II, we've carried the load from the Marshall Plan to today's deployments. But under Trump, that's changing. And his warnings about NATO's future aren't bluster, I can tell you. They're leverage to force real contributions. And geopolitically, this Strait standoff that we've got over there in Hormuz, it ties into the broader winds, like how Trump's energy independence policies have buffered us from the oil shocks. His tariff policies have helped us be able to afford all. We're not as vulnerable as Europe, which is why their hesitation stings a bit, admittedly. Now, Holt warned to knock-on effects like, famines from disrupted energy and agricultural logistics, the usual nonsense that Europe will bring up as excuses. But America is positioned strong right now because of Trump's foresight. Now, you'll look ahead a little bit with me, and this is my unique take on once America wins this conflict, and we will win it, ladies and gentlemen. And with Trump's strategy, we need to implement some bold reforms to prevent this freeloading forever. Here's what all that could look like step by step. And I think this analysis of mine, you're not going to hear anyone else mention it, certainly not on the mainstream media. But I think we ought to, number one, impose navigational fees on non-contributors. Countries like Germany, Italy, Spain that sat this thing out, well, we should charge them tolls for using the Strait of Hormuz under our protection, of course. If their tankers want safe passage, then they pay a premium for it. Fair share, fair competition, a compensation for the risks that we have for too long and no longer will shoulder alone. And that could generate billions of dollars to bolster our military or cut taxes here at home. Number two, reevaluate these alliance commitments. It really is time for a full audit of NATO and beyond. If allies won't show up for shared global interests like, secure trade routes, why keep pouring United States dollars into their defense? Trim contributions to deadweight members. Redirect those contributions to true partners who step up, like perhaps strengthening ties with reliable players in the Indo-Pacific. I think that's a great place to begin. Third, we can leverage economic pressure. We can use this to reshape global deals, reward competitors. Let's say Britain with their mine hunting offer with favorable trade terms. They get that reward. And we isolate the holdouts by linking the Strait of Hormuz access to broader agreements that would echo Trump's art of the deal style that put America first in negotiations from NAFTA to the Abraham Accords. The fifth thing is boost domestic energy ties. Double down on United States production to make U.S. even less dependent on energy. Trump's already slashed bureaucracy by 10% in Washington, D.C. He's multitasking, which freed up resources for all of this. And imagine channeling savings into more drilling or renewables that actually work and that would insulate us from future choke points. Next, public accountability campaigns. Rally the base to pressure these allies diplomatically. Share stories of American sailors risking it all while Europeans sip coffee or tea. Build that narrative loudly and boldly to shift public opinion globally. So those aren't radical ideas. They're rooted in the Founding Fathers' vision of sovereign strength under divine providence. No entangling alliances that drain us dry. We're done with them. We're cutting the cord. President Trump's forcing a reckoning that is long overdue. And you know what? It's working. All we have to do is look at the Strait of Hormuz. It's open. Iran's bluster and saber rattling isn't closing it. And our economy's humming despite the noise that you hear on social media. Folks, this Hormuz saga, it's a perfect example of why we back the America First MAGA agenda underneath President Trump. He sees the big picture. He demands fairness. He delivers results without apology. There's no distractions here. It's all advancing the America First agenda. Now, if you're fired up like I am, hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe, share, and follow me for more exclusive breakdowns about this kind of information. Share this video, please. Wake up your friends. Wake up everybody in your inner circle. And drop your thoughts below in the comments. I read almost all of them. Should we start charging these allies fees right now? Let's keep the conversation going. Meanwhile, head over to support the program at www.dougbillings.us. I'd like you to consider prayerfully setting up a $5 a month donation. Just set it up. It's automatic. www.dougbillings.us. I never charge you to watch the program, but it costs money to produce, and every little bit helps over at dougbillings.us. Now, subscribe to YouTube for free. Just head over there, search out at the right side Doug Billings, and click the bell so that you get notified whenever I drop new content like this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the state of play in America and around the Strait of Hormuz. Perception versus power and reality. America's leading the way. Thanks for tuning in to The Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you. God bless the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in this thing together. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, Doug Billings. Hey, my good friends at EMP Shield, that's electromagnetic pulse, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri. Electromagnetic pulse could wipe out your home electrical system, could wipe out your vehicle. And thanks to the radical liberal agenda that was put forth under Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, there are lots of people in this country who want to do us harm. And maybe an EMP device would be their chosen weapon. But EMP Shield gives you a device that can protect you. This little baby here goes on your home outlets, a computer, a router, whatever you want to protect. And then they also have a larger model like this. You can still hold it in the palm of your hand that goes on your vehicle battery so that you can get out of trouble from point A to point B. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug, ladies and gentlemen. Save yourself. Save your property. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug. We're in this together, folks. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.